This news broke last night. This would have made the thumbnail. I put together the graphics literally minutes before news broke that Columbia University President Minouche Shafik steps down as head of Columbia University. She issued a lengthy statement pictured here. That's right. We are not going to read the entire statement. That's my edits on her statement, but we will go to the Columbia newspaper here. The Columbia Spectator reports Columbia President Minouche Shafik resigns amid campus turmoil over war in Gaza. University President Minouche Shafik resigned from her post on Wednesday, she wrote in an email to the Columbia community. The announcement comes only weeks before the beginning of the 2024-25 academic year and marks the end of a tumultuous year in the position. During her tenure as Columbia's 20th president, Shafik faced fierce national scrutiny for her administration's handling of pro-Palestinian student protests, academic freedom, and on-campus anti-Semitism. She is the third Ivy League president to resign in relation to campus tensions over the war in Gaza, following University of Pennsylvania's Liz McGill and Harvard's Claudine Gay. So they got the trifecta. All of them eventually were forced out. Shafik served in the presidency for 13 months and 13 days, the shortest tenure in Columbia's history since 1801. It was a short tenure. She's a loser. Yeah. She's a loser. She was in and out in 13 months. Sad. Over the summer, I have been able to reflect and have decided that my moving on at this point would best enable Columbia to traverse the challenges ahead. Shafik wrote, I am making this announcement now so that leadership can be in place before the new term begins. Shafik wrote that she has been asked by the Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom to chair a review of the government's approach to international development and how to improve capability. With the move, Shafik will return to the UK, where she has spent the majority of her career. Katrina Armstrong, Chief Executive Officer of the Columbia University Irving Medical Center, will serve as the interim president, according to an email from David Greenwald, Law 83, and Claire Shipman, CC 86, SIPA 94, whatever the hell that means. I didn't go to college long enough to know what these abbreviations mean. Co-chairs of the Board of Trustees. Columbia's chapter of Students for Justice in Palestine wrote in a Wednesday evening post on X that any future president who does not pay heed to the Columbia student body's overwhelming demand for divestment will end up exactly as President Shafik did. The Columbia chapter of Jewish Voice for Peace, a pro-Palestinian student organization that co-organized campus demonstrations with SJP until both groups were suspended in November 2023, wrote on X that the students of Columbia will never forget the sheer violence unleashed upon us by Minouche Shafik, and we will not be placated by her removal as the university's repression of the pro-Palestinian student movement continues. Good for them, but they weren't the only ones happy about her ousting. The wrong people were correct about this for the wrong reasons. So Shafik has faced repeated calls to resign from members of the House Committee on Education and the Workforce, including Committee Chair Representative Virginia Fox, Republican from North Carolina, and Elise Stefanik, Republican from New York, as well as high-ranking politicians such as House Speaker Mike Johnson. Shafik testified in front of the committee on April 17th alongside Greenwald, Shipman, and Task Force on Anti-Semitism co-chair David Scheiser. The committee grilled Shafik on the safety of Jewish students on campus and what actions Columbia had taken to discipline the pro-Palestinian demonstrators. Stefanik applauded the resignation in a Wednesday evening post on X, writing, 3 down, so many to go. Jeez. So the Republicans were happy, but so were the protesters. Here from Middle East Monitor, here you could see the moment that pro-Palestine protesters found out of the resignation, and they were quite happy about this.
Shafik! Shafik! Let's just announce! Let's just announce! Her resignation!
It is mid-August, and students are returning to campus very, very shortly. And it seems like there is no indication that these protests are going to let up, as they should not. We're coming now into the home stretch of the campaign season where political consciousness is going to be even higher than it was when they were protesting over the winter and the spring. And so I hope they pick up right where they left off with a new president to call the NYPD on them. Pasta, what say you?
It's very interesting. I start looking at these protests, from a macro position, the big, the bigger picture. And I, went down to UCLA to see the protest on their campus.
Right.
By the time we got there, the encampment had been torn down. They had all the bulldozers in there. The police had removed all the protesters or the people who were inside the encampment of sorts. Obviously the way the media was kind of twisting things, you had some Jewish students who were acting like they couldn't get to class, where they just kind of cut off one passage and all they had to do was walk around the other side.
Right.
So an extra 5-minute walk and they get to school and whatnot. But I'm really surprised, Keaton, when you look at all this, how tied in the universities themselves are with the state of Israel, right?
Yep.
I mean, like, there's money coming from the Zionist nation that's involved with a lot of things that happen on these campuses. So when you see the demands that they're what they're asking, they usually have a list of demands. Now, you probably won't get all those demands, but you think that in a compromise, if they bring some information to light, and the people get educated, meaning the masses, the voters out there, can see how tied these colleges are to Israel and what they're doing. I think that's very beneficial, right? It's very positive for people to learn about what's going on. Obviously, we don't want to see these protests to continue because we want to see some type of change in Gaza, and I don't think anything's coming anytime soon.
Well, I'm just saying I want them to continue until there is a change, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the demands, right? That's one of their first demands is an immediate ceasefire, which seems so logical at this point. Like, even a Republican at this point should probably be saying, hey, man, how about a ceasefire at this point? But it seems like it's still going to continue to go. But, I started off thinking, too, Keaton, like, what could this president have done to kept her job, to not been on the chopping block, right? And that's just simply advocate for free speech. Tell both sides, no matter what, at the end of the day, you're going to get your chance. You're going to be protected. Your speech is going to be protected. We're not going to pull any of them. We're not going to pull any of you. And just, be that type of like non-partisan referee, I guess, of sorts. I mean, and that's what I think we should be looking for in these campuses when it comes to how they would handle these protests. So I don't know. I mean, it's just very interesting when you look at these situations. What was she supposed to do?
Well, I mean, they could have also negotiated with the students in good faith. That's what Brown University did. Brown University had encampments, and they said, all right, we're going to hold a vote on divestment in the upcoming fall session. That's what they could have done. And once Brown told the students that they would negotiate with them and hold a vote, the encampments went away. And that was the demand of these protests. And instead of negotiating in good faith with them, they called the cops on them to come and crack their heads open and drag them out. And so that's an option as well. But you are correct that if they had caved to that demand, they would have been under pressure from the right to step down anyway. Now, the interesting thing is that the president of Brown faced no such pressure because Columbia was high profile, because the protests were more raucous, though I would not concede they were violent. That's the other thing. Not a single NYPD officer has cited a single example of violence or harassment of anyone on the part of these protesters, not only on the Columbia campus, but on the New School encampment or the NYU site. No NYPD officer has cited a single example of a violent act or a violent threat against anyone coming out of these protest groups. And so that is another reason why it was so shameful of her to pull in the NYPD in the numbers that she did. Now, on the UCLA side, Pasta, where you went, we actually know that Zionist counter-protesters got violent with the pro-Palestine protesters,
Absolutely.
and the cops didn't come in until the day after it had happened to clean up, quote-unquote, right? But they didn't stop them. And so it's obviously so one-sided, and you're right. I think given how high-profile this protest was, she was kind of squeezed out on both ends. I mean, look, both sides are very happy about this. Obviously, you had the protesters rejoicing, and then all of the Republicans issued statements saying good riddance. So it seemed like she was on the good side of nobody. And I think had she just bargained in good faith, acting, basically what you said, which is respect the free speech right of the students and negotiate. They have a demand. Your students, who pay a lot of money to come to this campus every semester, have a demand. They're being peaceful. negotiate with them. That's what Brown did, and there was no problem.
Yeah. I mean, and when I do say it, I should be clear about it. When I say what was she supposed to do, obviously, what we're talking about, some type of negotiation would have been the right thing to do,
Right.
and maybe even meeting some of the demands that the people listed them. When I say what was she supposed to do, meaning she was going to get it from the right if she acted a certain way. I mean, even Mike Johnson.
Absolutely.
It's just, par for the course that a lot of these Republicans or populist right lawmakers are just going to attack woke colleges no matter what. I mean, they're going to attack it as so. They're just their woke agenda anyways. These people need to step down. Damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. But it's very interesting. I'm glad these protests are going on because, like, at the end of the day, you said at Brown they negotiated to meet some of the demands. Did they meet some of the demands?
Well, they're having a vote on it. They're having a vote on it this fall. The board is going to vote on
the board is though, not the students.
Actions. Right. So they gave them a vote. So they didn't commit to anything, but they committed to basically hold a vote.
Cool. Yeah.
Yep.
Because I think at the end of the day that if people are going to protest, they need to protest with their wallet. If Brown decides not to divest from Israel and they continue to take the money, continue to meet their demands of Israel, whatever they're doing over there, then people can say, well, I'm not going to send my kid to that school because of that reason. That's how we need to fight back and push back. But I'm glad they at least got the board to make a decision,
Yeah, well, if the board votes the wrong way, I'm sure the encampments will be back up the next day. So that's how they'll do it.
Please clap.